Known as the Little Ituri Forest. Many of the animals in the Little Ituri Forest are quite shy and rely on camouflage to help them stay safe and hidden. So we need to make sure we keep an eagle eye out for any darker colors or stripes that help these animals to blend in with their environment. Over to the right, looks like we can already find some animals with striped legs known as okapis, while up ahead I can see a rust-colored antelope known as a bongo. And don't let the striped legs of those okapis fool you, as they're not related to the zebras at all. In fact, they're the closest living relatives to the giraffe. We know this because both okapis and giraffes have similar skull structures, and they both have an 18-inch long prehensile tongue. Prehensile means finger-like, so if you can do it with your finger, they can basically do it with their tongue. That comes in quite handy for stripping leaves and vegetation off of branches. Now, like I mentioned, this rust-colored antelope on our left is known as a bongo, but the lighter-colored one over there to the right is a greater kudu. We can tell that's a female greater kudu on the right because she doesn't have any horns. Meanwhile, males have 6-foot-long spiral horns and shaggy beards. The bongo on the left back there had horns that get up to about 3 feet in length on both males and females, and they're commonly referred to as the ghost of the forest because of how hard they are to spot in the wild. Both the bongos and the greater kudus have some lighter colored vertical stripes running down their backs though, that are meant to mimic the rays of sunlight that peek into the gaps in the trees up above those animals. All the way in that back left corner, there's a black rhino, the smallest of the African rhino species. Black rhinos get up to about 3,000 pounds in weight, and they can charge at speeds of around 35 miles an hour. There's another one coming up here on the left, as well as some saddle-billed storks off to either side of the truck. The black rhinos have a prehensile upper lip, just like I mentioned with the tongue of the okapi. It helps them to bring their food a little closer to their mouth. And black rhinos are pretty solitary animals, which explains why there's just saltwater two of them here in the forest, as opposed to other rhino species like white rhinos, which are a bit more social. Now, speaking of social, those saddle-billed storks back there will mate for life in individual pairs. And we can tell the difference between the male and female because the male had brown eyes with little teardrop-shaped wattles under his bill, while the female had bright yellow eyes with no wattles under her bill. Saddle-billed storks get up to about 5 feet in height and they have a wingspan of about 7 to 9 feet. To put that into perspective for you, that's about the same width as the canopy of the truck up above your head. They get their name from the yellow saddle shape that was on the front of their bill, and since they don't have any vocal cords, they'll actually rattle those bills in order to communicate with one another. Saddle-billed storks. So as we leave the saddle-billed storks in the Little Ituri Forest behind us, we're now going to head into the Safi River. Like that name suggests, there may be a few aquatic animals in store for us up ahead, so be sure to keep your eyes peeled to the water. Over to the right, looks like there's a pod of pink-backed pelicans as well as a Nile hippo or two, but if you can't see the hippos on the right, don't worry my friends, there might be more coming up on the left. Pink-backed pelicans get their name from the pink coloration that appears on their back during their mating season. That pink coloration can also spread to their pouches, bills, and facial skin, almost making it look as if they're blushing. Pink-backed pelicans are one of the largest flighted bird species in the entire world, as they have a wingspan of about 7 to 9 feet as well, just like the saddle-billed storks. And they're known as colonial nesters, which means they nest in pods of up to 500 pelicans. While you may think they store food in their pouches, pink-backed pelicans actually prefer to swallow their food whole as soon as they catch it. Now a group of hippos is known as a belote of hippos, and the Nile hippos have their eyes, ears, and nose all located on the top side of their head, allowing them to remain almost completely submerged throughout the day, helping them to stay cool in the water and out of the hot African sun. Once they decide to fully submerge themselves, however, Nile hippos can hold their breath for several minutes, and they'll even close off their nostrils and fold back their ears in order to keep the water out. Despite having quite large teeth, Nile hippos are strictly herbivores, which means they eat plants and vegetation. So if you find them out of the water, you'll commonly see them grazing on the grasses along the sides of the riverbed. And a full-grown Nile hippo weighs just about as much as a car, which is about 5,500 pounds. Now over to the left, keep your eyes peeled for Nile crocodiles, the largest crocodilian species in all of Africa. Each one weighs around 500 pounds, and they measure anywhere from 16 to 20 feet in length. From time to time, you'll find these guys with their mouths cracked open a little bit. That's because Nile crocodiles are unable to sweat. So in order to get rid of some of the moisture, please remain seated, my friends, for your safety. In order to get rid of some of that moisture in their body, they'll sit there with their mouth cracked open. That's why you sound that moisture to the inside of their mouth. While the Nile crocodile has one of the most powerful bite forces in all of Africa, they can be surprisingly gentle with their jaws set as well. Mother Nile crocodiles will even roll the eggs of their young around in their mouth when it's time for their babies to hatch. They'll aid them in hatching by softening up their eggshells. Once the baby crocodiles have hatched out of their eggshells, their mother will continue to carry them around in her mouth for a little bit to help keep them safe and protected from any predators. Coming up on our right-hand side, looks like there's a large tree with a thick trunk known as the baobab tree. Baobab trees also get the nickname the upside-down tree because, as you can tell, their branches kind of look like roots sticking straight up out of the ground. As we wind our way down this hill, we're about to enter the West Savannah, so now's the time I'd like to point out that handy-dandy animal spotting guide located above your heads, as the West Savannah is home to many well-known African animal species, but there may also be a few that you've never seen before or never even heard of. And with the animal spotting guide on your side, you'll become an expert animal spotter here in no time. Looking out across the savanna, you'll notice it's a lot wider and more open than in the Little Ituri Forest. There's a lot less trees and bushes to hide out in. That's because while the animals in the Ituri Forest rely on camouflage to help them stay safe and hidden, the animals out here on the savanna are more equipped with speed and agility to help them stay safe and escape any threats. Off in the distance, we can already start to see a few different animal species here. One of the easiest ones to spot is the Maasai giraffe over there. Now once we get a little closer, you'll be able to tell it's a Maasai giraffe because the edges of her spots are a bit jagged and irregular, especially if you compare that to the spots of the reticulated giraffe up on your spotting guide. You'll notice the reticulated giraffe spots are a lot cleaner and more geometric in their size, shape, and pattern, while the Maasai giraffe spots are a bit more organic. Speaking of spotted animals though, looks like over to the left, laying down in the shade of that tree, are the African painted dogs. African painted dogs get their name from the spot patterns on the back that kind of look like paint splotches. Each spot pattern is unique to each individual painted dog, and members of the same pack are able to identify each other from great distances thanks to those spot patterns. The African painted dogs are the most successful hunters in all of Africa, and that's thanks to the large numbers in which they hunt, and their excellent communication skills. Also on our left, these darker antelopes with large hooked horns are known as sable antelopes. Sable antelopes are quite unique because they do not run from danger like other antelope species. Instead, they stand their ground and show off their large hooked horns for self-defense, trying to either scare off or fight off any threats. Sable antelopes are the official emblem of the Harambe Wildlife Reserve, and they are known as crepuscular animals, which means they're mostly active in the early morning and the late evening, helping them to avoid any of the nocturnal predators here on the savanna. While the dominant male sable antelope leads the herd, it's actually the dominant female sable antelope that leads the movement of their herd. And as we move our way through the savanna here, you might start to think to yourself, Safari Guide Nick, what are all these piles of dirt we keep seeing off to either side of the truck? And those are termite mounds. Termite mounds are made of saliva, red clay, and dung, and once they're hardened and baked in the hot African sun, they can become as hard as concrete, making them excellent scratching posts for many of the animals here on the savanna. This giraffe over to our right will spend most of their day standing, as they typically eat for around 16 to 20 hours every single day. However, that may leave you wondering when they have time to sleep. Giraffes will actually sleep while standing, and only sleep for about 30 minutes each day. What's even crazier than only sleeping 30 minutes each day, though, is splitting that 30 minutes up into short standing naps they'll take throughout their day until they reach their full 30 minutes. Over to the left, those large reddish-brown animals with thick horns are known as Ankole cattle. Ankole cattle also go by the name of Watusi, named after the first African tribe to ever domesticate them. And while their horns may look quite large and heavy, looks can be a bit deceiving, as their horns are mostly hollow, being made up of a honeycomb-like structure that contains lots of blood vessels to help pump blood up into their head and horns throughout the day to cool them down. These horns get to be about 3 to 4 feet in length each, giving the Ankole cattle a combined width of 6 to 8 feet from tip to tip. And they are part of the same family as buffalo and bison, known as the bovine family. Ankole cattle are one of 2 domesticated animal species here on the reserve, and they're also known as ruminants, which means they have 4 chambers in their stomachs to help them digest their food a little bit easier. That digestion period usually takes around 72 to 100 hours, and during that period, very hard to see, but up there on the hill to the right, there's some darker antelopes with shaggy beards known as Wildebeest. Hopefully we can get a better look at them in a moment though. But during that period, Ankole cattle will chew their food, swallow their food, partially digest their food, then regurgitate their food, to repeat that process all over again until it passes through all 4 chambers in their stomachs. Parts of that digestion period are commonly referred to as chewing their cud. Now, these giraffes get up to about 18 to 20 feet in height, which is about the same height as the length of the Nile crocodile that we saw back in the Safi River. And thanks to their long legs, they can travel pretty impressive speeds of around 35 miles an hour over short distances, or about 10 miles an hour over longer distances. A group of giraffes is known as a tower of giraffes. What it looks like over to the right, there's some more baobab trees up on that hill. Another nickname for the baobab tree is the tree of life, because for about 9 months out of the year, they remain completely leafless, as they prioritize storing water in their thick trunks. Their thick trunks can store many gallons of water in them, and during the drier seasons of the year, animals like elephants and rhinos can use their tusks and horns to puncture into those trunks and create a steadier supply of water for many of the animals here on the savanna. Speaking of elephants though, looks like we just passed through quite a few down trees and logs and branches, maybe even a few rocks and boulders that have been pushed around and moved around recently. So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled for any larger African animals as we make our way through this area. As we make our way through all the areas of the reserve here, you'll notice that the greenery and vegetation are quite important to all of these animals. Whether that be for things like shelter over in the Little Aturi Forest or for dietary reasons, like with the hippos in the Sauk River or the grazers we've met so far in the savannah. It's important for us to make sure we do all the little things, like reducing, reusing, recycling, watching our water and electricity usage, and using recycled and recyclable materials, because all those little things add up to create quite a large impact on our planet. Help us to keep it a lot safer for all of our animal friends like the giraffes, ankle-like cattle, wildebeest, and all the animals across the globe. Coming up ahead, we might be getting another clue as to what large animal caused all that damage back there. As off to either side of the truck up here, it looks like there's some red clay. Red clay contains minerals in it that are otherwise not found in the diet of the African elephant. So where there's red clay, there may be some elephants near trying to find their daily vitamins. Looks like there's even tusk marks coming up here on the right-hand side of that red clay. That's because both male and female African elephants have tusks. The tusks of the elephants are made of ivory, which is the same material that makes up the tusks or teeth of the Nile hippos that we saw back in the Sauk River. And since both males and females have tusks, we can tell the difference between them because males get a bit larger, up to about 14,000 pounds in weight, and they'll stay in small bachelor herds or by themselves, while female African elephants, like we see over here to the left, are a little smaller. They stay in large family herds where they can raise their young, and they're led by a single matriarch. Now, the African elephant is the largest animal in all of Africa, and they have incredibly powerful trunks that are made up of thousands of muscles, more in fact than every single person on this truck has in their body combined. Their trunk is a combination of their nose and their upper lip. And just like I mentioned with the tongue of the okapi and the giraffe and the upper lip of a black rhino, that trunk is prehensile. African elephants specifically even have two little prehensile digits on the ends of their trunks that act almost like fingers, allowing them to grab things such as food to bring closer to their mouth. If you ever see one of these elephants looking a little muddy or dirty, don't worry, that's not bad hygiene. It's actually just a really great skincare routine. African elephants have incredibly sensitive skin, and they use their powerful trunks to fling mud and dirt upon its back. While you may think elephants drink water through their trunks like a straw, that'd be about the same as you drinking a glass of water through your nose. So what elephants do instead is they suck water up into their trunks to store it there, and curl that trunk back around to their mouth, spraying water into their mouth like a hose in order for them to drink. Coming up here on our right, we might be able to get another look at those wildebeest that I tried pointing out earlier. There they are. Wildebeest get their name from the Afrikaans term for wild beast, and they are migratory antelopes that travel in annual migrations known as the Great Migration, in herds of up to 1.5 million wildebeest. That makes the wildebeest the second largest group of migratory mammals on Earth, second only to humans. Humans are the only mammals on the planet that travel in groups larger than those wildebeest. Whenever wildebeest migrate, they often do so in search of water, and during the most extreme conditions, they can even travel for about 5 days without a single drop of that precious resource as they look out for the next watering hole. Speaking of watering holes, coming up here on our left, looks like there's a flamboyance of greater flamingos. The flamboyance is what you call a group of flamingos, and the greater flamingos are the largest flamingo species and also the lightest in color. But speaking of color, if you ever find any gray and white or black and white flamingos down there near that suspiciously shaped islet, those might be baby greater flamingos. Baby flamingos will keep their same black and white color for about the first 1 to 2 years of their life before earning their famous pink feathers. And flamingos get their famous pink color from the protein known as beta-carotene, which can be found in their favorite food, the brine shrimp. Flamingos are known as filter feeders, so if you see them with their head under the water upside down, that's actually how they eat. They have specialized bills that allow them to sift out the particles and sediments along the bottom of the water as they search out for those brine shrimp. And one last pretty interesting fact about these guys is that the anatomy of a flamingo's leg is surprisingly similar to the anatomy of a human's leg. They just have more elongated joints. So if you look about where you think our knee would be on that flamingo, that's actually their ankle. Seems there might be some animals up ahead causing us to go a little bit slower here. Hopefully those animals don't go too far from the ride path though by the time we make our way up there. That way we can get a good look at them as well. This is their reserve after all though, so we're going to be respectful to all of our animal friends and travel at their pace. Not all of them have the best eyesight, and sometimes they just want to get a little bit of a better look at you guys since you are their visitors. As we leave those greater flamingos behind us though, that means we're now crossing over from the west savannah into the east savannah. And unlike their friends, the African elephants, other animals like white rhinos do not have powerful trunks to fling mud and dirt upon their backs with. So instead, they'll wallow around in large mud pits, like we can see coming up to our left-hand side in just a moment. They coat themselves in a thick layer of mud that will not only protect their skin from the sun, but will help to cool them down and act as a natural bug repellent as well. Both rhinos and elephants are known as pachyderms, which means thick-skinned in Greek. So despite having quite sensitive skin that they'll protect with mud and dirt, their skin can get up to about an inch thick in some places. On the right, all the way in the back there, are a couple of ostriches, the largest bird species in the entire world. Despite being a flightless bird, that doesn't really slow the ostrich down, as they're still the fastest land animal in the entire world on 2 legs. And we can even tell those are female ostriches because their feathers are much lighter in color. Females have kind of light gray to light brown colored feathers, while males will typically have jet black feathers and white tips to their wings. And if you're wondering why the largest flightless bird in the world even needs wings, it's because their wings will help them to steer. Kind of like the tail of the cheetah, which you can now see over to our left-hand side, hiding out by that tree. See the spots of one laying down. Hope you can see her face on this side of the tree. Cheetahs are the fastest land animals in the entire world. They can reach speeds of around 60 miles an hour in just about 3 seconds, thanks to their unique physiology, such as having much smaller skulls in comparison to the rest of their body, making them more aerodynamic, and having semi-retractable claws, which means as they run, they can choose to leave their claws out to give them a little bit more traction, kind of like an athlete wearing cleats. Some more cheetahs easier to spot here. Like I mentioned, cheetahs have incredibly powerful tails that will help them to steer like the rudder of a boat, allowing them to make sharper turns as they sprint across the savannah. And they have 2 little teardrop-shaped spots that act like sunglasses. 2 little teardrop-shaped spots under their eyes that act like sunglasses, helping to draw the sun away from their eyes as they hunt. That comes in quite handy, as cheetahs are known as diurnal hunters, which means they hunt during the day, as opposed to other predators like lions, which are nocturnal hunters, which means they will hunt at night. But speaking of lions, for any of my friends on board who are fans of Disney's The Lion King, that rock structure on the left may look a little familiar to you. While that is not Pride Rock, it is still the same type of rock structure known as a kopie. Lions like to use kopies to get a higher vantage point over the land when looking for prey, and for laying around on the hot rocks throughout the day as they take their cat naps, as that lioness was demonstrating for you back there. Lions are pretty much professionals when it comes to napping, as they'll rest an average of 16 to 20 hours every single day. However, when they aren't resting, it'll be the male lions that stay home and do most of the childcare and babysitting, while the female lionesses are the ones that go out and do most of the hunting for the pride. On the right there, looks like we found these white rhinos I mentioned a moment ago. White rhinos get quite a bit larger than their cousin the black rhino, as white rhinos get anywhere from 4,000 to 5,000 pounds in weight. The group of rhinos is known as a crash of rhinos, though you're not really going to find black rhinos in crashes, since like I mentioned earlier, they're more solitary animals, while these white rhinos are more social. And the white rhinos get their name from the Afrikaans term "vite," which means wide. So if you got a good look at their upper lip, you may have noticed it was quite wide and squared off, giving them their namesake. Back over to the left-hand side, there's quite a few burrows here, which may belong to the largest burrowing animals in all of Africa, the warthogs. Warthogs dig their burrows with their top tusks in their hooves, then back down into them with their razor-sharp bottom tusks left exposed to ward off any unwanted visitors or predators. While you may know the warthogs as Pumbaa from Disney's The Lion King, that name is a bit contradictory as it does mean foolish one in Swahili. And the warthogs are pretty intelligent creatures. From time to time, they'll even borrow the burrows of other animal species to help cut down on the time, energy, and effort it takes to dig their own burrows. The warthogs get their name from the wart-like protrusions that appear on predominantly male warthogs' faces. While those protrusions aren't actual warts and they don't contain any bone in them, they do help act as cushioning, helping to protect the warthog's face and cheeks from the tusks of other warthogs that spar for things like territory, food, and mates. Back over to the right-hand side, these shaggier antelopes are known as waterbuck. Waterbuck are quite unique because they do not migrate like the wildebeest we saw back in the West Savannah. Instead, they're quite sedentary animals, which means they like to stay in one place for most of their life. And given their name, the waterbuck, it's no real mystery they like to stay near one main water source, with their skin even secreting an oily substance that acts as a natural waterproofing agent for their fur. Also on the right, there's a nest on the ground, and judging by the size of those eggs, looks like we might have found a clutch of ostrich eggs. The ostrich eggs are the largest bird eggs in the entire world. Each one weighs around 3 pounds, which is roughly the same as 24 regular chicken eggs that you find in the grocery store. And their shells are so tough that a full-grown ostrich weighs around 300 pounds. You can stand on one single egg without cracking its shell. As we enter the final area of the reserve, though, I'd like to welcome you to Magadi Glen, the home of the Nigerian dwarf goats. So while these guys may look small and cute, keep in mind they are fully grown. That's just where they get the name dwarf goat from. Goats are typically known for being quite playful creatures, but it's not all just kidding around with them. Whenever the goats are playing, it is a maturing exercise that allows them to establish dominance within their groups. And like I mentioned, all the way back in the West Savannah, with the Ankole cattle being one of 2 domesticated animal species here on the reserve. These Nigerian dwarf goats are the other of those 2 domesticated animal species, and they are also known as ruminants, which means they have those 4 chambers in their stomachs as well. Unfortunately, my friends, as we leave the Nigerian dwarf goat behind us, that does mean our safari here today is going to be coming to a close.